Hey painting pals, welcome back to Mandy's Minis. And you know what we're gonna do because you already saw the thumb. I have her. She is wonderfully base coated, 2 thin coats, cuirass leather. And now we're moving into the mid-tone, which is going to be uniform brown. Now, before I jump to the mid-tone, it's a 2-to-1 mix of uniform brown to cuirass leather. First thing I want to say as I'm going through and doing this is I'm sorry, I'm going to be a bit scatterbrained and all over the place because I have been sick. I actually have been knocked out for almost a week now and barely am getting back to normal, feeling much better. This is actually take 2 because the first time I forgot to turn on the mic, so there was no audio. And rather than just redo it later, thought it would be easier to just refilm it. So let's hope I can do much better this time. So here we go. As I'm going through, I do want to make sure and leave some of the previous paint showing because we want to build up the vibrancy as we're going. And more paint means more vibrancy. You get a much richer color out of it. So we're going through, and that's why I start with the shadows. And I'm moving up to the highlights through everything else. So we're getting a little bit of this color down. Now this particular model has been quite a pain in the butt as far as assembly goes. There's only 2 parts, but they assemble, you can see right at the hands and right at this weird funky arm. So I've done the best I could with making it work, and off camera I'm going to go through and fix those a little bit better. I can actually use the paint. I'm going to show you this a little bit later, but I can actually use the paint to kind of contour the model a little bit to offset those areas that have been difficult. So now I'm just trying to come in and get these colors down. And here's where I'm going to start showing you that contouring. See, she does not have a belly button or any muscles lined in. That doesn't mean I can't paint them in. I'm kind of leaving that little line and that space to represent those areas. So this is like when women contour their makeup and things like that. We're doing that same aspect here. I'm also leaving a little bit of space here for where the knee joint would be, because you're going to kind of see a little break there, and the shadow kind of represents that. So we kind of get that joint in there. And so this would be our secondary shadow. The cuirass leather would be our primary shadow, and then here we have our secondary shadow color. So there we go on that. And now we're going to jump up to our mid-tone. And remember, with your figures, you don't want them to be completely even. So when I say we're leaving some of the previous colors, I mean those small tiny areas where I want the deepest, darkest places. So like leaving that belly button area and behind the knee. So there are certain places like that, but for the most part, mid-tone is going to take up the majority of the figure. That's the main color you're going to see. So I would say it's a good way to think of it as like maybe 60% of the model is going to have your mid-tone, 20% is going to have your shadows, both primary and secondary, and your highlights are going to be the remaining 20%. And the reason that I picked these colors is with the Middle Eastern skin tones, they're very sunny and tan. And so I'm leaning into a very yellowish skin tone. I mean, it's browns, uniform brown, but as you can see, it is a more yellowish brown. Barely, but it is. This is also great for basically your olive skin tone. And once again, just like with the knee, I'm leaving a little break in that elbow, the inside of that elbow. And one of the best things I'd recommend when you're doing a skin tone that isn't your own is to definitely check out reference photos, because you want to really make sure that you're representing that skin tone in a very respectful way. So you want to make sure you're doing it right, and you don't have your own point of reference for it, because obviously my skin tone is not the same color. Mine is very white, Caucasian, kind of pinkyish. I don't have that to use as a reference. But one of the things we all do have in common is placement of where our shadows and highlights would be. It's just a matter of picking what colors that you want to be careful on. So that is our mid-tone down. All right, so the next part that I'm going to do, the next step, is I'm going to do that mid-tone again, because I want to make sure that I'm getting up high enough on the color value. Obviously, this is an Egyptian figure, and she doesn't quite look bright enough for that skin tone. So I'm going up one more, but when I'm using it as if it were a different layer. So I am still leaving some of the places that I had covered previously uncovered, so I get more of that gradient from color blends. If you layer up slowly enough, then your eye will fill in the rest, and you don't have to worry as much about color transitions and blending. And the best part about layering up is that every step goes a little bit faster because you're doing a smaller and smaller area. And this is another area I want to talk about here. I'm not going any further than this back here because this is a very shaded area. It is under and behind, so it's definitely not going to hit mid-tone very well. So that's kind of what you're seeing there. All right, legs, and then we will be on to our highlights. All right, so now for my highlight color, I am going to be using scale color, camo euchre brown, or euchre. Can you tell I live in Michigan? Camo ochre brown. So, and of course, what I'm starting with is going to be my secondary highlight. It's not my highest highlight color. It is going to be a 50-50 mix of uniform brown and the ochre. And I'm just going to put it in those specific places where she would be highlighted, have that brighter skin hitting because of the sun. It's going to be under the eyes because we always want to draw attention to the eyes. So the brighter colors will draw your eye there. The tip of the nose and the tip of the chin. A little less so on this side because that is my shadowed side. And the tops of the arms and certain areas on the hands, the top of the hand, into the knuckles. Now on your hand, the knuckles are what gets highlighted. You can see there, top of my knuckle here is the brightest color, and then it goes into shadowed areas. So that's kind of what we're representing. Now I got paint all over my hand, but that's okay. What's new? The best way to actually do that is going to be kind of as dots, because as you can tell, kind of the peaks and valleys there. So that's what we're representing there. And again, I'm going to go through and clean this bit up. This is where she's connected from a second piece, is in that arm right there where it's kind of bulgy, and this hand where it's kind of bulgy. So it's really hard to do that kind of contouring on camera, so I'm going to do that afterwards. But I'm also going to hit a little bit back here at the top of the arm and over here. And then of course we want to get some of this. The stomach's going to have some. Usually this would be where the muscles would stand out, but since we really don't have any. Just kind of adding a little bit of it. The particular pose she's in, the arm is going to shadow more of the belly, so we're really not going to go that high with it. So that's probably pretty good right there, and that's where I'm going to leave that. And then we're going to hit the legs and just do a nice line of highlight on the leg, and again on this leg, and then onto the back. Now I'm going to do a little bit of this elbow because of the way it's sticking up, and because elbows also kind of point out, so that just kind of makes it look a little bit more realistic there. And then we're going to do a line down this leg and a little bit of a highlight over here, and that's it for that part of the highlights. So now we're going to move on to the pure ochre, and I'm getting just again under the eyes, especially because I really want to draw focus there. That's where we as people are conditioned to look. The very tip of the nose. I'm going to skip the chin this time because that wouldn't be as highlighted as those other areas. And then we're going to go down along the arm and again into those specific dots here on the hand. And again, I'm going to do that a little bit later. I am not going to hit back here anymore because again, that's a little bit shadowed a little bit further back, so it's not going to, as much light isn't going to hit right there. Then I am going to go right inside the previous one, just a little bit, and a little bit down here as well. On the back, I'm only going to hit a little bit over here because this one is a little too far back, and it's not going to hit as hard because the sun's coming from this side. So there are my highlight placements. Now I do want to reinforce them a little bit. So now we're going to go on to the last step, the final step. The step that's going to take her from this wonderfully warm and sunny yellow skin tone and turn it into something that feels more like actual skin tone, and that is glazing. And I am using Lead Red from Scale Color. I have a very thin glaze layer on my brush, and I'm just going to hit those areas where we have the most blood showing under our skin, which is going to be the cheek areas and the bridge of the nose, and then areas where our skin is thinnest. So it's going to be like the elbows, including the inside and outside of the elbows. The wrists, a lot of joints hit that. Fingers, and then the wrists. And then you're going to get things like the hips and certain areas, which honestly on the belly, there's not very much, but I am going to do some at the top and bottom just to give that feel so that it just feels a little bit like there's skin tone there as opposed to just being this kind of jaundiced look. And kind of the same thing around the legs. I'm going to hit just a few little places for hints, but not really have that much showing until we get to the back, which is, again, we're at the inside of the knee. The line up the back of a woman, if she's thin enough and fit enough, she'll have a nice defined line there. And then once that dries, if we're still feeling that it's a little yellowish, we can go through and add a little bit more. In this case, can add a bit more on the cheeks, especially because that's going to go well into her makeup. A little more in certain areas, just to bring it out. And that's it. So there we go. And as you can tell, I have a whole lot more to paint on her. So I'm going to get started on that and transport you to the final product. There she is in all her glory. Fun fact, she is a wonderfully sneaky character who is going to make the DM regret killing the player's previous character. So she's got a big adventure in front of her that I can't wait to hear about. I hope you enjoyed this one. I want to thank you so much for bearing with me. Again, I just not 100% myself and not 100% healthy yet. So I know it wasn't the most smoothest or well thought out of my videos as far as my speaking goes. And I hope you were able to follow along. But let me know in the comments. Please be nice. But if you so feel, down there you will be able to subscribe, like, and anything else you find down there will support the channel if you feel you'd like to. We always appreciate that. They do help the channel out quite a bit. And a very, very special thank you to our patrons. I've missed being with you guys and enjoying that community while I've been out, so I can't wait to jump back into that. And thank you so much for your support. Thank you again so much for watching, but I'm going to leave this here, and until next time, have fun and keep creating.